Welcome back to part 2. Now before we start, we're going to change a few things so it'll be easier for distributing the trees. We're going to take the split edges input and just go straight to the merge by distance. This is going to make the center of each block an integer on the x and y plane. If you don't know what that means, it'll make sense later on. Now over here we're going to delete the greater than node and we're going to use a delete geometry instead. We're going to take the delete geometry input and then we're going to take the output of that into the instance on points for the grass block. We're then going to take the selection from the not deleted equal node and plug it back in. This will do the exact same thing. It makes zero difference here, but it will mean that it'll be faster down here. Moving on, we're going to use a set position node down here, and we're going to take the top cell geometry and set the position up by 1 meter because we're wanting to put each block 1 meter above the previous. Now we're going to use an instance on points, and we're going to grab the tree and we're going to plug it into the instance. Now you can see we've got a tree everywhere. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a grid. We're going to use another instance on points node and we're going to plug the grid into the instance. We're going to realize instances. Now we're going to use a distribute points on faces. I'm going to add it to the system. Let me also really quickly realize these things. Let me also plug it back into the join geometry and realize the instances so that I'm not lagging so badly. And you can see we've got a lot of trees. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to reduce the amount of points on the distribute points on faces. We're going to change it to a position disk and we're going to set the distance min to 3 meters. This is going to spread out the trees a lot more and it's going to be a whole lot easier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start to make a noise texture similar to the one over here that'll allow us to select where we want to distribute our points. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and add a noise texture. We're going to add a compare node and we're going to add a boolean map. Now plug the color into A and we're going to set the value of greater than to 0.53. We're going to set the scale to 0.01. And we're going to plug it directly into the distribute points and faces so we can see what we're doing. So now what we have here is we have a mask that'll clump the trees up together. And if we change up the B value, it'll change up how many of them are spawned. You might want to change down the input value to something like 4 so it's less laggy. Now, to make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to duplicate it 2 more times. And we're going to also duplicate the boolean math value once more. We're going to plug them in like this. And we're going to set the first boolean math to not equal and the second to subtract. We're then going to plug the subtract into the selection. Nothing's going to happen because we're selecting an identical noise texture to be subtracted. However, if we start editing these values, so I'm going to set this to 0.1. We can see we start to get some more interesting results. And I'm just going to set this up a little bit. And probably pull this one down a little bit. Maybe up. It's really up to your choice on how to spawn the trees. Now you can see it looks pretty good, but the trees aren't actually placed at the right spot. They kind of offset a little bit. So what we need to do is we need to set the X and Y values to a whole number. Now there's no dedicated node to do this, but what we can do is we can set the positions and just change them to an integer. So we can use a set position node. Then what we can do is we can take the position and then we can just simply use a separate XYZ and then a combine XYZ to alter the numbers of the position however we feel. So now working with this, we're going to use a float to integer, and what this will do, it'll simply set a value, say like 0.8 to 1. Simply put, we're setting our x and y values to always be without any decimal places. we're going to do a similar thing now, but we don't need to worry about this bit here. We're going to duplicate this noise texture actually down here, and then we're going to use two instance on points nodes, taking the set position that we got here, and then also plugging these two into here, the join geometry in the final output. Drag that over there. Now we can just plug this value in here, and this is going to be for our grass. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to grass 1 low, just click and drag on it, and we can plug it in here. So now we can see that the grass is only spawned where the trees are spawned. So to solve that, we're just going to go into these noise textures and kind of edit with them a bit. Play around, get something that you like the look of. Might increase this one up to like 1. Might increase this one a bit. There we go, that's more Minecrafty. We can tune these values too. Really, it's up to personal preference on how you edit them. Now finally I'm going to get one more noise texture, and this is going to be for our flower collection. So now going into the Minecraft assets folder, we're going to hit new for a collection, and we're going to simply drag in all of the different flowers. Got this. I'm going to plug in the instance to the instance, and we're going to see that it'll spawn in all 3 at once. So we're going to select pick instance and also separate children. So now it's going to pick a random flower. Now what we're going to do is we're not going to take this selection here. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this one here, and we're going to plug in this value here and subtract the values where there is grass on it. And then we're going to plug it into the selection. And there you go. Now this will stop, this node here will stop poppies from spawning where there is grass. Now finally we can just increase this value so that they're a little bit more rare. And there you go. Alright, so this is technically everything that we need to do to create the Minecraft generator. However, I'm really quickly going to get over here, take this position node, and I'm going to make a ability to kind of change the seed in a way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a vector map. I'm going to add the group input, and I'm going to use a separate XYZ. I'm going to plug in the vector and the group input. I'm going to plug it into the X and Y values. So if we plug it into both the noise textures, what we can see is we can kind of scroll around as the terrain moves. It'll kind of update. Now you can see we get a bit of noise with the trees and the grass, also it doesn't get updated. We can't fix the noise with the trees properly, but we can fix the grass. Well, we can improve the trees. We can just take the vector and plug it into every single noise texture over here. And then we get a completely different result. But that's good, because what we're able to do now is we're able to move the world. Now, if we want to stop the grass flickering, we're going to go into our end panel, go over to the group value, and we're going to change the X and Y values into integers. And if you want to, we can also add other controllers that are like the greater thans and whatnot, blah 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 blah. Really up to your heart's content. But this pretty much is the tutorial. Let me know if you want to see any other videos like this. I could do other terrains or just different node setups entirely. Anyway, I hope this was educational, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.